In his book, The Holographic Universe, author Michael Talbot writes about a very weird presentation that he saw. His father hosted a party for some close friends. For entertainment, he hired a professional stage hypnotist. It began as expected, with the performer giving various tests to the group to determine who would make a good subject. A man named Tom was selected, and he went into trance very quickly. What followed was the usual hypnosis show. Tom was convinced that a giraffe was in the room. He ate a potato and thought it was an apple, that sort of thing. Then came the climax of the performance, and that's when the real weirdness began. Welcome to Patterns of Supernatural Phenomena. For the climax of the show, the hypnotist brought up Tom's teenage daughter. He gave Tom the post-hypnotic direction that when he awoke, he wouldn't be able to see her. The girl was placed right in front of him. When he was brought out of the trance, he was asked if she were in the room. He looked around. Though she stood there giggling, he said, "No, not here." Over and over, Tom was asked if he could see her. While the giggles grew louder, he said that he couldn't. Now, all of those are typical hypno tricks. Then this happened. The hypnotist stood behind the girl. He took an object out of his pocket, keeping it hidden from everyone in the room. Cupping it in his hand, he placed it against the girl's back and asked Tom what it was. Tom stared straight at his daughter's stomach and correctly identified it as a watch. The hypnotist asked him if he could read the name and inscription on the watch. He did it accurately. The person who owned the watch was not known to any of the guests in the room. Later, when Talbot questioned him, Tom said that he never saw his daughter at all. It just looked like the hypnotist was holding up a watch. Now, I'm a mentalist and a past member of the Academy of Magical Arts at the Magic Castle in Hollywood. I have studied hypnosis for years, including stage hypnosis. I have never seen this test demonstrated. My first response would be that stage hypnotists often use secret assistance from the audience, so the simple answer is that Tom had been recruited. But that explanation doesn't work. This was a small gathering of personal friends. Tom was a friend. Michael Talbot questioned him. Tom would have known that Talbot was going to use his experience in a book that he was writing. Would he have allowed a personal friend to use that experience as an illustration if it hadn't been real? If it was real, what are we to make of it? Through trance, Tom was locked in a delusion that gave him strange power. Trance is a mysterious phenomenon. It can create delusion. Both play a pivotal role in patterns of supernatural phenomena. In some people, hypnotic trance can open the door to paranormal experiences and abilities. But trance influences all of our lives. When you're in a theater deeply absorbed in a film, that is a form of light trance. Or when you're driving and experience white line fever, losing all track of time or place. Trance can be most dangerous when it's experienced collectively. A good example are Hitler's Nuremberg speeches. They took place at night. As the vast crowd stands watching, many of them in uniform and in rigid formation, the scene is lighted partly by searchlights and partly by fires. There is dramatic music. Hitler rages as though a dark spirit has taken control of him. And that's what people who knew him reported to have happened. I'm sure if we had been there, it would have been a mesmerizing experience. He put an entire nation into a trance, creating an evil delusion of national power, glory, fear, and hate. That delusion murdered millions. But I have a disturbing question. Could megachurches be using Hitler's technique? Could their worship be nothing but trance, created by pounding music, smoky darkness with bright lights focused on performers, and carefully orchestrated emotion? Hitler's Germany was built on celebrity worship. And so it is with megachurches that wouldn't exist without celebrity pastors and worship leader rock stars. False, trance-like worship opens the door to hellish destruction, and that is what's happening in churches across the United States. Trance leaders who call themselves pastors, but who are soul-killing wolves, are being revealed when it's too late. Friends, this kind of aberration is not going to be allowed forever. I wrote a book about unmasking and confronting wolves in the church. It's entitled Day of the Wolf, and there are sad comments on Amazon from people who have suffered from spiritual wolf attacks. But it doesn't take pageantry to induce mass delusion. All it takes is fear. Throughout history, lying delusions have led to the most awful brutality. They appear when people lose faith in trusted institutions, leaders, and each other. Then someone drops a rumor, and it's like a deadly virus in a weakened body. Suddenly it's everywhere, constantly mutating into darker forms. The result is a vortex of fear that can turn decent people into vicious beasts. In medieval Europe, the Black Plague came in waves. When it appeared, terror took control, and lying rumors focused blame. Jews have always been an easy target. For centuries during the Middle Ages, mindless hate was directed toward them. In 1285 in Munich, 180 Jews were burned to death because someone spread the rumor that they had sacrificed a child as part of a satanic ritual. So when the plague arrived, the lies came with it. In Milan in 1629, rumors spread at the highest levels of government that people were causing the plague through sorcery and contagious poisons. The rumor started that Jews were poisoning the water supply, and the brutality began. But it wasn't limited to Jews. One night in Milan, someone began smearing the buildings with an unknown substance. Here is an eyewitness description. I quote, "The next morning in every part of the city they saw doors and walls of the houses stained and daubed with long streaks of I know not what filthiness, something yellowish and whitish spread over them as with a sponge." End of quote. In the ensuing fear and rage, many innocent people were dragged from their homes, beaten, thrown into prison, and murdered. Here is an example from another eyewitness. It happened in a cathedral, and I quote, "An old man was observed after kneeling in prayer to sit down. First, however, dusting the bench with his dark cloak. 'The old man is anointing the benches,' exclaimed some women who witnessed the act. The people who happened to be in the church fell upon the old man. They tore his gray locks, they heaped upon him blows and kicks and dragged him out half dead to convey him to prison to the judges to torture. I beheld him dragged along in this way, nor could I learn anything further about his end. Indeed, I think he could not have survived many moments." End of quote. This is what mass delusion can do, and we see examples of it throughout history in every culture. Very often in the cold light of day, the delusions are clearly asinine. In 1914, Canada joined in the First World War against Germany, but the United States didn't join until 1917. During those years, rumors spread through Canada that German Americans, at the time there were 10 million living in the U.S., were getting ready to launch bombing and espionage raids from America. At one point it was rumored that 80,000 well-armed German Americans were training near Niagara Falls for an invasion of Canada. This rumor was promoted by no less than the British Consul General in New York and prompted the Canadian Prime Minister to order an investigation. Well, quickly it was discovered that the whole thing was bogus. In Indonesia, between 1937 and 1981, over and over appeared the headhunter rumors and delusion. The idea was that a human head was necessary to supernaturally strengthen large construction projects, and that the government had sanctioned headhunter teams to acquire the necessary items. People were terrified to leave their houses at night or to walk through the forest alone in the daytime. In our so-called scientific age, we are even more prone to trance and delusion. Due to social media, delusions grow to horrific worldwide proportions in hours. During the hellish attack by Russia on the Ukraine, there have been many people in America, including pastors in churches, who have claimed it was happening. It wasn't really happening at all. In spite of bodies lying in the street, these people devoutly believe that the hideous images were just lying propaganda. Some of them believe that JFK Jr. didn't really die in a plane crash. He's been in hiding all this time and was going to appear in Dallas at one of their meetings. So, led by a delusionist wolf leader, they gathered to wait. Humans are stupid sheep. Never in history has there been such a potential for absolute evil to control the minds of millions. In 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 9 through 12, the Apostle Paul writes these words: "The coming of the lawless one is by the activity of Satan, with all power and false signs and wonders, and with all wicked deception for those who are perishing, because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. Therefore God sends them a strong delusion, so that they may believe what is false, in order that all may be condemned who did not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness." So the most powerful delusion in history is coming. It will be so convincing and overwhelming that millions will fall under its total control. Based on the history of trance and delusion, what can we project about it? First, it will have been prepared for a long time. People will look back and perceive what they consider evidence that's been overlooked or misunderstood, thereby creating a historical basis for the lie. The greatest delusion in history will be established on lies that exist right now. It will come at a time of worldwide terror and vulnerability. The systems upon which we depend for order and survival will have broken down. Very often, mass delusions begin by offering hope. For instance, hope in a strong, charismatic, apparently compassionate leader who appears to have all the answers in a horrible crisis. But soon the hope transforms into bloody monstrosities from hell. Here are a few such false hopes from the past. The only way for the common folk to thrive is if we kill all the rich people. That lying hope led to the bloody French and Russian revolutions. Germany can only be great again if Jews are cleansed from the nation. We know where that led. There is a long pattern of evil manipulation based on lying hope. So in the Great Delusion, violence will be directed at scapegoats. Being the greatest delusion, it will offer the greatest, most vicious false hope from a most charismatic evil leader in all of history. He will tell the world that there are dangerous people who need to be removed so that humanity can go forward in peace and prosperity. Delusions are most successful during catastrophes. Jesus predicted that just before his return, there would be terrible wars, famines, pandemics, and earthquakes. We talked about all of that in a previous episode. Such chaos is the perfect environment for an unprecedented mass delusion, especially one that seems to offer salvation from non-human advanced beings who have our best interests at heart. What does that mean? Recently, a new docuseries began airing entitled Unidentified. It purports to search for answers regarding UFO manifestations in the skies. The series stars Demi Lovato, and in it she reveals her experiences contacting what she believes are entities from other planets. According to Lovato, the program was inspired by a mind-blowing experience, her words, that took place during a stargazing trip held on her 28th birthday. She says, and I quote, We tried to do this protocol where you make contact, and all of a sudden something showed up directly above us in the sky. Lovato describes it as a series of lights that formed into the shape of a question mark before vanishing into the darkness. When asked whether the experience was frightening, she replied, and I quote, "The feeling that you get from these beings is so warm and loving and accepting that it's just overwhelming joy that happens when you're able to make contact." End of quote. She states that the connection occurred when she intentionally tried to meditate in order to manifest sightings. She argues, and I quote yet again, "These beings are extremely peaceful and loving, and when they show up you can absolutely feel that concept." End of quote. Lovato believes the old fiction that they became interested in the human race in the 1940s due to our development of nuclear weapons. In her opinion, since then, they have taken a more active role in monitoring the planet, to the point that they are, in her words, "They're living among us and we don't even realize it. These beings are looking out for our best interests. There's nothing to fear." This poor woman thinks calling them aliens is offensive. How powerful is such a delusion? Do you remember the Heaven's Gate cult? In 1997, the group was so convinced that a UFO would save them from the coming apocalypse and carry them to a higher spiritual realm that 39 members committed suicide together so they could be rescued and transported. Now we love to think that they were just bat crazy. I don't believe it. What manifestations had they experienced that would give them such total faith? Then there is the very recent story of Matthew Coleman, who was the owner of a Christian surfing school, whatever that is, in Santa Barbara, California. Apparently for years, Mr. Coleman was a sane, honest father and husband. But one day he took his children to Mexico and murdered them with a spear gun, then dumped their bodies by the side of a road. Why? Because he had been having visions that his wife had serpent DNA and had passed the corrupting genes to their children. He murdered them to stop the contamination from spreading. This nightmare first began when he immersed himself in the QAnon delusion with its evil, almost game-playing seduction. This led him to British media cultist David Icke, who was obsessed with lizard people, and the vision started. The powers of darkness created a murderous delusion in a fake Christian. And there are millions of fake Christians. Don't be fooled. The entire human race is susceptible to the most hideous mass delusions. We can't mention Demi Lovato without pointing to a major false prophet of the alien delusion, Dr. Stephen Greer. Through his documentaries and interviews, Greer has become the guru of the loving Space Brothers religion. His message is that evil governments have been persecuting and even killing the adorable aliens who are giving their lives to help us. No one better fits the description blind leader of the blind than Dr. Greer. The Greer-Lovato religious message, promoting the delights of alien visitation, is in jagged disagreement with the nightmare of so-called alien abduction as experienced by thousands. It is laughable in light of the latest Pentagon documents that have been released. These state that UFO sightings of our space brothers can leave witnesses with radiation burns, along with brain and nerve damage. But that's all in our best interests. I believe that what Greer and Lovato are presenting is the dim outline of the great delusion that is coming. It will be accepted as an interplanetary religion, and it will absorb and replace all other belief systems. Imagine a story that goes like this. A charismatic worldwide leader appears who manifests great supernatural power. He is loved and admired for his apparent compassion. But his power is not of this world, and non-human beings serve him. He presents a religion that offers solid historical evidence that Jesus Christ is not who the Bible says he is. Clear proof is displayed that he never died and rose from the dead. Instead, he was just spirited away to a higher plane of existence. As evidence of that, Jesus appears in person, doing trance-inducing miracles of transformational peace and joy. The darkest moment of our history, this new reality offers brilliant hope. But it will vanish like smoke in a wind. Tragically, those enslaved by this delusion will awaken to a living death that goes on forever. But what is very interesting is Ms. Lovato's assertion that alien beings are living among us right now, preparing for what is to come, and we don't realize it. We're going to spend more time on that in a future episode. I would conclude with this question. What delusion is enslaving you right now? Here's a test. Do your controlling beliefs generate fear, hate, and anger? Do you find comfort and strength associating only with people who share your views? Do you refuse to consider any information that doesn't agree with you? Do you call things that are good evil and things that are evil good? Have you lost the ability to tell the difference? Do you passionately follow people who are known for doing evil because they promise to give you what you want? Most important of all, what do you believe about Jesus Christ? Do you refuse to believe that he is who the Bible says he is? If you say you believe in him, how is that changing your life? All delusions bring destruction. Destruction is in the future for those who refuse God's love and forgiveness, offered only through his Son. When all of it is over, millions will awaken from their delusions, but it will be too late. I so deeply hope and pray that won't be you. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Also, please do like and subscribe to our channel. It helps us continue with these productions. Thank you for watching.